Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Voice of Olympus, I am proud to bring you Living Hellenismos with Tony Mierzwicki. Greetings and welcome, Tony. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well today, Hercules. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm looking forward to your show.
Well, we're very pleased to have Spektor Baal on the show today, who is well known for his many instructional videos on YouTube. Spektor has been a practicing magician and a student of the occult for 8 years. Primarily, his work attempts to merge the Qliphoth with the Tree of Life, but he also has profound interests in various other occult subjects. He is also a producer and vocalist of Gothic synth music. Most of his music involves occult subject matter. I wrote an article for my Pathos blog, Holistic Spirituality, on magical partners and sacred marriage. Actually uploaded it today. And I wanted to have Spektor share his thoughts on how spiritual practices can be enhanced by having a magical partner. Spektor, thanks for making yourself available and coming on the show. How are you today?
Oh, thanks. I'm very good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Hercules.
So as I understand it, you work extensively with the Qliphoth as a way of accessing the shadow aspects of the personality. Could you summarize your approach?
Well, my approach is a lot has to do with astral projection and the astral body. I do feel that there's a lot of stigma around the Qliphoth, that it's not a place that many want to work with, because a lot of other people who study the occult, who work with the Tree of Life, that I've got into conversations with, felt like the Qliphoth, there's nothing there. They told me, well, there's nothing there, it's dead. And I do not believe that. I look at the Qliphoth as a place where you go treasure hunting. You go into the dark and you find the true pieces of what is inside the Qliphoth, that will show you parts of yourself that you have never seen before. And I do believe there are shards of light in the Qliphoth that will open certain pieces of yourself that will make you more aware of who you truly are and become more, I don't want to say more human because I don't look at it that way, just become a better version of yourself. And I do believe that the shadow aspects in the Qliphoth do show it does show that to you, but you do have to tread lightly in the Qliphoth, because I do believe that there's a lot of things that are put in the Qliphoth to persuade you not to do it, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, well, this is a test. Now, are you going to pass this test or not? Are you going to understand this knowledge, what it's going to be shown to you, or you're not ready for it? So I do believe there's certain tests in the Qliphoth, so you have to tread lightly.
You're making it sound almost like tough love.
Yes, exactly. It's just like tough love. Once you get into it, it gets a lot easier, and it's just when you start out, it's very different from the Tree of Life, because it's reversed. So imagine this. Imagine you got two pieces of fruit. You got a clean piece of fruit and you got one with worms in it. Which one are you going to eat? You're going to eat the one with the worms, because everything is kind of reversed. That's how I saw. That's how my experience was when working with the Qliphoth tree.
That's actually a very interesting example, because I've come across corn in the supermarket with worms in it. So you know that that's organically grown. Whereas if something's genetically modified, the worms won't touch it. So you're actually better off having the fruit or the vegetable with the worms in it, cut the worms out, and then you know that the food there is good.
Wow, that's actually cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it was your thought. I just picked up the ball and ran with it, dude.
That's cool.
Yeah. So So you do a lot of solo workings exploring your shadow. How would you incorporate a magical partner in those shadow workings? How would you, is
Well,
that something that's difficult, or is it something that comes automatically?
it is possible to do that, but you would want somebody who is very understands their astral body and their astral self. And you don't want to just take somebody and push them into the clip off. If you're doing a magical working with somebody, you want to be on the same page. Now, the thing with magical working with a partner, and this is what I've learned, you got to keep your mind open. Everybody's going to have their own experience, and we all are influenced by the interaction we have with human beings, with ourselves, with our partners. So let's say the best example is that, okay, you got your partner here, and you start off going into the astral together, you know, and your partner says, okay, I see a desert. What do you see? I see so and so and so. Oh, I see that too, but I also see this. And then you guys feed off each other. You understand? Wow, this is very important when doing this, because it needs to start flowing together. The energies have to start flowing together so that it's in the current is in alignment. That's probably the best way to put it. The current is in alignment, because sometimes it might not work. Sometimes you might find a partner that is a little bit more closed-minded. No, I don't see that. No, I don't see this. And it's not going to work, because it needs to feed off of each other, and it needs to play out like a movie so that everything is in sync. That's how I look at it.
So the impression that I'm getting from what you're saying is that not only do you need a partner who's on the same page, same sort of goals, but also a similar level of spiritual development.
I would say a person is important that they have a similar level of spiritual development. You know, let me rephrase that, because they have to have an open mind to just allow things to happen, and do not put some sort of a wall. They have to be very open-minded, if that makes any sense. The spiritual level of development is only that they're just more sensitive to the body, more sensitive to the astral, so that you guys could, the two people could feed off of each other. I hope that doesn't sound vampiric, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched a number of your videos when I was preparing for this interview, and the one video that really stood out was your sex magic video. And you talked about raising energy, which can then be used for manifestation. And you said that the climax that you experience would energize your will. So I was wondering if you used a chaos magic approach to energize sigils, or how you actually would go about energizing your will.
That's a very good question. Now, I have not used any sigils when doing that type of work. A lot of it with me has to do with the astral. So you would, it's very tricky, because you would try to be building up your energy toward the climax, holding it off, and whatever you want to manifest, you will be thinking of that while you are climaxing. Now, the thing also is that you're trying to keep your sexual energy going, you know, thinking sexual things, but also at the same time trying to think of the manifestation that you want to create. So it's kind of a mind game. You know what I mean? So I approach it as going into the astral. I would be in the astral at the same time while I'm in my physical body, and I would be doing it at the same time, if that makes any sense. So you would be trying to split yourself. I don't think it's the easiest way to do it, but I think it's pretty effective in that matter. Does that make sense?
It actually does make sense, but it also shows how multidimensional your approach is. So you're working within the physical body, 3 dimensions, and then you're also going into the 5th dimension, which is the astral. So it's incredibly complex. So I can imagine this isn't something that a beginner would be able to get into. It would take many months, possibly many years of hard work to get to
Well,
that
I
sort of
do
level.
think, Tony, I do think that actually some people, of course, through past lives, have learned a lot of stuff magically and are not aware of it. I've met magicians who've never really did any astral work, and I've worked with them about a few, 1 or 2 sets, and all of a sudden they're all over the place. Do you understand? And it's like, wow, so they already had that experience in past lives. And I do strongly believe that. Now, some people are not able to do this, which is fine. They can take a sigil, put it in their mind, try to, I'll use the term ejaculation if it's male. Well, anyway, get to the point of the climax and then think of what they want to manifest while having the sigil in their mind. But you still have to kind of keep the sexuality there, think of the sigil, and think of the manifestation as soon as you climax. So it's still brain games. I don't know if it's a brain game, but
well, it is. You've got to hold multiple concepts in your mind, as well as functioning in multiple dimensions. So yeah, it's difficult. One thing that I really liked in the video was that you recommended a transparent approach to sex magic, which was heavily hinged upon consent. So the consent would involve both the human partner that you're working with and also any entities that you're working
absolutely.
with. You're really big on consent. No, I like that.
Well, I look at the entities, their energies, and I look, we're humans, we're interacting with one another. If you go to another human and you say, give it to me, I mean, that would be rape.
Yeah, pretty
So
much.
I look at it as, you know, you have to ask the spirit too. Don't assume the spirit's just going to give it to you. So you want to have the consent of the spirit so that, you know, you respect the spirit and the spirit respect your bounds. So both boundaries are respected while doing that.
So with getting consent from a spirit, do you communicate with the spirit directly, or do you use a Ouija board, or how exactly do you
That's
communicate with the
interesting because
spirit?
I was actually thinking of buying a Ouija board because I was curious on how I could use that for my magical practice. No, I actually will either go to where the spirit is in their domain, or I would call the spirit and I would talk to them directly as I am talking to you. I would ask for their consent, why I am doing this, and if they agree, great. If they don't, thank you very much. I'm not going to start asking why and all this stuff.
Okay. So no groveling, you just take no as no or yes as
No,
yes.
no is no. That means that it's not. First of all, if for a human being, you wouldn't want to grovel. So the best bet would be that maybe it's not the right time. Maybe it's not, you know, for this type of practice, because every spirit has their own attributes, you know. So one spirit said, hey, listen, this is not going to work because I don't do this. Okay, you don't do this. But I've only worked with 2 spirit, particularly with this was Lilith and Lamastu. That's whoever I work with.
Okay. So moving along, there was another video that you did where you explained the difference between evocation and invocation. And you recommended that evocation should always be attempted prior to invocation, which is very, very sensible. So would you recommend performing evocations with a magical partner. And the reason why I'm asking is that some authors suggest that this is a bad idea and that you should really be using a familiar rather than a human partner. I was just wondering your thoughts on that.
Now, when we're talking about, okay, evocation, well, there's a big topic with that because there's some people that do not agree with what I say, and that's okay. And everybody has their path and understanding. And I'll give you a really good example. I put out a video about Kali Ma on TikTok. Excuse me. And all I talked about is going into the clip-off tree because a lot of shadow aspects are in the clip-off tree to talk to Kali Ma to deal with one's shadow. Of course, there was this person, I do not remember who they were, that they just said, well, this is the divine feminine, you don't mix this and this. And when it comes to magic, even when it comes to religion, you have, let's say you have, the Jewish religion, Christian Catholicism, they will break off. I don't agree with this. I'm going to break off and create my own version of it. So magic always transfers and always changes. So when people are stuck in one thought process of this is the only way it is and that's it, I don't see any growth in that. But this person, I tried to comment saying that this is a different system than yours. Of course, this person disabled the comments. But anyways, I couldn't write anything to explain. But I just wanted to bring that up. But back to the question at hand. Now, do you mean two partners that are going to do sex magic to invoke a specific spirit into them before they start doing sex magic?
No, not necessarily sex magic, but with evocation, you basically bring an entity into manifestation. So you can either do it within incense smoke, or you can put it into a scrying mirror, a crystal ball, and then look at it. So you basically have to have two people standing within a magic circle where they're protected. You'd have the zone of manifestation surrounded by a magic triangle, and they would have to be united in their wills to question the entity, communicate with it. I was just wondering whether you thought that was a good idea or not.
So wait a minute, it just sounds like you're talking about the old way of calling a goetic spirit?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
that's the traditional way of doing it. If you think that there are better ways of calling in spirits, I'm always open to learn, but I'm more familiar with traditional medieval techniques.
Well, this is the thing that I've experienced. Now, I have not ever did the divination of calling the spirit into the black mirror or the triangle or a crystal ball or obsidian ball. I did an experience since I'm doing more demonology now. I understood one thing. It doesn't really matter about intention of will, because I've done the circle. I put angelic holy names. I created a triangle. I drew it all on, I don't know if it was cardboard or plastic, it doesn't matter. So anyway, I did everything and I called the spirit and it appeared in the triangle. Of course, it appeared in my mind, of course. It didn't physically appear in the triangle. I saw the triangle in my mind and I saw the spirit. It didn't go anywhere. I talked to, I think it was Baal. When I talked to Baal, it wasn't as comfortable talking to him as I do now, because every time I would ask a question, he would repeat that question. Like he would never give me an answer. Everything was like this. It was really confusing. And then the more I started, I decided to make an experiment. I removed all the angelic names and I put only infernal names. So I put Lilith or things of that nature. And it was the same thing. There was no difference. And then I decided to do astral workings in a way of going to them, because I thought to myself, this would be a much easier way because I'm in their place. I'm wanting to speak to them. I'm in their home, which means they will not have any aggression toward me in any way, which I feel worked out better. It's probably not answering a question. I just went on a rant. But anyway, so do I feel the old Solomonic ways is fine? I feel that they're okay as long as you don't start to constrain the spirit and ask, if the spirit starts disagreeing with you, I did read there's a lot of constraint, and a lot of do this or this will happen, which I feel will not work, because the spirit is energy. How are you going to constrain a piece of energy? So if the energy is going to get angry at you because you're trying to force it to do something, I don't think that's really wise. It's like somebody knocking at my door, and then all of a sudden I throw them in the corner. I said, well, listen, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. I mean, that's how I look at it. So as long as you don't constrain or try to force the spirit into something that it doesn't want to do, I think it should be okay. I don't think anybody should force anybody to do anything. That's what I feel is the danger with old magic, because it's very well, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And us as humans, what happens to us as humans when this happens? We go into rebellious stage. Who are you to tell me what's going to happen? And does that make any sense?
No, it makes perfect sense, because in the Solomonic Grimoires, the angelic names and the divine names of God are used like a sledgehammer. You compel the entity to do what you want it to do. So this idea of consent that you're really big on doesn't come up.
No, and it doesn't. And I do feel that you really can't constrain energy or force it to do something. If somebody's asking me to help them with something, and if we have some sort of kindness in relationship, I would want to help this person. If you're trying to force me to do something, so you're technically, what you're doing is actually you're trying to, what is that word that you use? Strong arm a spirit.
Strong arm, yeah.
It's like mafia stuff. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. You'll break your leg. So
Yeah.
that's why I don't think it's I think it's some people, everybody has their magical way of looking at things, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I just feel that there might be a nicer way to do this, and a more being humanized. No, that's not the word. What's that word? That's not humanized. More civilized, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the reason why I wanted to have you on the show is that you're not just repeating things that you've read parrot-like. You have 8 years of experience, and you're actually talking from a standpoint of the experience that you've acquired over the years. So that's what makes what you have to say so valuable.
Oh, thank you. I really, truly appreciate it. Well, everybody, I do feel that people have to jump in and do practical magic. You can't just look at the book and say, well, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
And then they read so much, they create all these scenarios of what actually could happen, and no experience come about it. So, and you're going to learn knowledge and understanding and wisdom, but know that whoever wrote the books, that's their wisdom and their knowledge that they're actually sharing with you. But that's not exactly going to be what you're going to be learning. So that's what's important, that you learn what you have to from practical workings, and then go into the book and see, this happened to this person too. So then that verifies that this actually is something that exists.
Yeah. So moving on to invocations, do you think that invocations can be performed with a partner? And I was wondering what challenges would be involved in having an entity occupying two physical bodies.
Okay. Now, wait a minute. Are you talking about an invocation of one spirit going into two bodies?
Yes. So,
Oh.
so basically, because we started off talking about evocation, which you use as a preliminary for invocation.
Yes.
So I was wondering whether you could actually do an invocation having a magical partner there. So that would involve having that entity occupying both bodies, your body and that of your magical partner. Is that something that would work, or do you think it's a bad idea?
Well, The difference when I do invoke, the reason why I would invoke a spirit is because we always will question ourselves, is it the spirit speaking to us or is it us speaking to us? And that's where we really have to quiet our mind. And we always are gonna, it doesn't matter how many years you're doing this, you're always gonna question it. By doing an invocation, you hear the spirit better. I feel that I hear the spirit better. And it's an energy. Do I feel that it could be split amongst two people? Yes. How is it going to be? I have no idea. Is it going to be bad? I mean, what is the intention of the person doing it? If a person is, okay, let's say one person is here, one person is here. One person is invoking the spirit, and this person's actually asking the spirit questions while it's in that body. I could understand that. But what happens if one spirit is invoking the same spirit, and another person is invoking the same spirit? What would be the purpose of that, though?
Well, the thing is that it's going to occur as a matter of course anyway. So moving to a Christian example, you may have various Christians who are involved in evangelical circles, bringing in the Holy Spirit into themselves. So you're going to have multiple people calling in the Holy Spirit and having revelations and the like. So I can imagine a lot of people calling on. There's only a small amount of gods that we can call on. So you may find yourself performing an invocation at the same time as someone else is. So you're basically sharing that deity. But in this case, you're doing a magical working with a partner, and you're both bringing in that particular entity into both of yourselves at the same time.
I see. I thought about it only as if a person is invoking this entity and they're invoking the same entity, are they gonna? I looked at it as just one-on-one communication. That's why I was asking.
Okay.
I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, the energy splits. I don't think there's anything going to be wrong with that. I don't, okay, what's the difference if I'm dealing with my, let's just throw Lilith in there. I'm invoking Lilith. Somebody half across the country is invoking Lilith too. Another person's invoking Lilith, The energy is so widespread. So I really don't think there's not going to be any type of danger in any way of doing that. I do feel that evocation is very important, that you introduce yourself to the spirit and you know the spirit well, and you've been working with the spirit. You don't just want to go and invoke the spirit because you don't know the energy, so you don't know what's going to happen. Now, I usually, when I invoke, I never go into full invocation. It's usually partial invocation. Why I'm saying that is because I could feel myself and I could feel the spirit. So I'm pretty control over the situation. I have never had a situation that I've been totally taken over. And I don't think that, I think it really depends on the person. I think it depends on how they look at things. So what might happen to me, and if you invoke a different spirit, it might be totally different the way you're going to react. So that's a very, I don't want to say personal thing, but yeah, it kind of is personal. It's kind of like, this is how this is, it's not going to be the same for everyone.
Yeah. Okay, so moving along to astral projection, there was a video where you gave various tips for cleansing the space that you're working in, and you talked about the need to control any fear which may manifest, and that sort of ties in with one of Crowley's teachings, that fear is failure and the forerunner of failure, just putting it aside. So I was wondering, if you were doing joint astral workings with a magical partner, would there be any additional tips?
Okay, so when doing, the idea with cleansing the space has to do with you purifying your, I don't want to say Kleponic energy, but dark matter. Okay, so we have dark matter, I know, in science, but there's also in the Qliphoth, there is dark matter. It's an alchemical thing that I've noticed. That's what I call it. And I feel that it is something that needs to be cleansed. I also believe that when we get angry, when we get sick, we have these energy, the energy gets lodged into the corners and into the house. That's why sometimes when we walk into a home, or if we walk into somebody who's actually very sick, you have this heavy energy that feels very Saturnine, that it doesn't feel light. It kind of feels like it's pulling you down. And that's how I look at it. So you're cleansing the space to be sure that whatever energies that are, I don't want to negative, let's call it negative. I just don't like using it because it doesn't, negative doesn't specifically mean bad. But you're cleansing the space to make sure that none of it gets involved before you contact the spirit or before you do anything in the astral. Another thing that I really truly suggest in doing is actually doing the Golden Dawn version of the middle pillar. Or if you want to do the Egyptian version or the Greek version or whatever version you want to do, because it brings, to me, it aligns your chakras and also brings down your Godhead. The thing is this, usually our ego gets involved too much. Our fear gets involved. When you bring in that, you could also do the bonus ritual. It will actually balance everything out so it doesn't interfere with what you're actually going to see. Does that make sense? So your brain gets cleared up a little bit more.
I mean, it makes perfect sense because the bonus ritual is an adaptation of the headless invocation from the PGM documents.
Mm-hmm.
And the original ritual was basically an exorcism where the exorcist asks and receives power over all spirits, earthly, terrestrial, watery spirits. And then from that standpoint, once he has power over lesser spirits, it could then be used as a preliminary for Geshic work, because that's actually how the Golden Dawn would use it. So, and it sort of ties in with what you're saying.
So when two people are going to do astral work, they have to be on the same page. We're going here, we're going here. Like I talked, a little before, and communicate what they see and hear at the same time. The cleansing is very important. And here's another thing I want to bring up. Gods. Okay, you got two. Let's look at it this way. We got thought forms, we got egregores, we got thought forms, we got egregores, we got the true gods. Okay, and the goetic, because technically many say that they're old gods that were demonized. Now, you got one tribe here and one tribe here. One tribe conquers the other tribe and says, my God won over your God. Because of the collective consciousness, they created something in the astral that gets layered on the original energy of that God. And it's not the true essence of that God, but something on top of it that the collective consciousness collected. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is what happens with goetic entities. Goetic entities are very, very, like every time I would work with a goetic entity, I would feel a very euphoric feeling. I would feel like like a light box switched in my head once actually I talked to the real entity. Not what was in the book. What was in the book just gives you a description of it. But then once you start having a conversation with that entity, all the egregores or the thoughts of actually what that entity is dissipate. And you see the true goals of what that entity is. And then I see a light blows up in my head as like I see God or something, if that makes any sense. Not God, but you see a light in your mind. And I'm like, okay, that's something that I opened. This is the true essence of that energy.
That actually makes perfect sense. I see working with the Greek gods exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. So the starting point is Greek mythology.
Yeah.
We have legends connected with the various gods, but once you start experiencing the gods, you start to see them for what they truly are, which is exactly what you're saying.
That's awesome. It's like you opened something that was like hidden, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, wow. So, but yeah, and I think it's like, I think that's with every spirit that I think that's how it is. But there's just too much people. I noticed a lot of people in the forum, there's too many people who don't do practical work. They don't do it, or something that is taboo, or don't go with the clip off, there's nothing there. they also keep away. So, but I'm the type of person that I need to experience it myself, or I can't make my own decision on what works for me.
I agree with you totally. For years, there's been this phenomena of armchair magicians, people who read books but never actually do any workings. Then on the other hand, you've got those people who don't bother reading anything or just a 101 level book and go out there and start doing workings. You really need a balance of theory and practice.
No,
Bring
I
the two
totally,
together.
I totally agree. But it's so interesting. I'm not thelemic, right? But I've noticed that when I would do Golden Dawn rituals, they were pretty strong. But when I would do a thelemic ritual, it would be a lot stronger. Crowley kind of knew how to build a magic, a spell or magic system. But it makes me wonder, why would it be stronger? It just sometimes makes me, why would this be stronger than this? Is there a specific reason? Is it because more people believe in it? Is it a current of that way? Or it made me wonder about these things, but that's just me wondering stuff.
I think it's a combination of things. Crowley would have to be the most influential magician of the last century. And because so many people are working his system, you've got the various AA groups, you've got OTO groups, and so there's an egregor built up. So I can imagine his versions of the ritual being far more powerful. Whereas with the Golden Dawn stuff, you do have a few groups working the Golden Dawn stuff, but then you've got Wiccan groups dumbing down various Golden Dawn rituals. So I imagine that the thelemic ones would be stronger for that very reason. But I'm just speculating. I hadn't really thought about it before.
No, it just came to my mind because I have the book by Thomas Carlson, Goetic Magic. It's a really good book that has to do with the clip off. And, Thomas Carlson has to do with the Dragon Rouge. And I did some work with the Dragon Rouge in the book, the magic, and it was pretty powerful. And then it made me think, well, I did that, and then I did this, I would get one of my library books, any of my magic books, I would do a ritual in there, like, I don't feel anything. You understand what I mean? So it would really depend on what it is. The strongest magic that I told you that I felt is actually going and talking to the gods, demon, whatever energies face to face. That's the strongest I've ever felt.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So moving along, I understand from one of your videos that you do workings to help dead pets transition to the afterlife. And I imagine that this would work very well with a magical partner, so long as they were clairvoyant. So you'd be able to double the volume of messages received. So I was wondering if you have any advice for anyone who would want to try helping pets transition with the use of a partner.
Now, wait, transitioned with the use of a partner, like their owner? Is that what I'm trying?
Transition to the other side. A lot of people talk in terms of the Rainbow Bridge as being a destination point for dead pets to go to. And personally, there's quite a few pets I would want to visit on the Rainbow Bridge. Pets that were very, very special to me as I was growing up.
Well, the thing is, I do feel that it does help to try to speak to the pet. The same as, okay, so I've worked with necromancy. Okay, so I've looked at it the same way as talking to a pet. You just allow and try to speak to the pet. And hopefully that the pet understands that, it's going to be okay. That's how I look at it, the transitioning. When it comes to necromancy, because I talk to my, relatives that passed on, sometimes another good way of doing it is contacting a spirit that is good with animals, and then you could speak to the spirit to speak to the animal. You know what I mean? Instead of using the spirit as a middleman, which actually is much easier than to speak to the animal, because you're already used to working with I'm used to working one specific way. So I might, let's say if I wanted to talk to dogs, I would call Anubis and I would deal with Anubis to help with the pet with the transition. I helped my cat by contacting Bastet. So I would use the gods to help with the transition, because this is, I do feel that dogs go to Anubis, and I do feel that cats go to Bastet.
Yeah, makes sense. Although Anubis is a very obvious choice because he is a psychopomp figure. So part of his role was to take the spirits of the deceased down into the underworld. So I imagine it wouldn't be just human souls; it'd be animal souls, or at least dog souls as well.
That's what I also thought. I thought if it carries, then it's talk to him and he'll deal with it. I mean,
Yeah.
and he'll say this is what's going on and help with the transition. And that's what was done with a person with their pet too. I'm contacting Anubis that I was involved in.
Okay. So moving on, if it's not a personal question, how has having a magical partner changed your life? Are there any anecdotes that you'd like to share?
Well, the thing is, having a magical partner, it's somebody you could talk to without them telling you you're crazy. That's the main thing, but because most people are gonna just say you're nuts, which is
True.
okay. Everybody's nuts in their own way. The thing by having a magical partner is that you can do rituals together. You know, you could experience wisdom and knowledge, and also because you have something to share. I think a lot of it has to do with sharing experiences with that, and also, you know, building energy, sex magic, and so forth. But I strongly feel it's just exciting that you're able to share your experiences with that partner, and that partner shares experiences with you, and both are on the same page on trying to enlighten, develop the soul, you know. So that's how I look at having a magic partner.
Yeah, I tend to see it the same way. I mean, a spiritual path at its core tends to be very solitary. And I think that's why so many people feel drawn to magical groups and covens, so that they have fellowship, to borrow a Christian term. But having a magical partner, one special person who, as you said, you can share experiences with, and they don't judge you as being crazy.
I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible gift, and one thing that I found is that when I've had a magical partner, then things happen quicker and more powerfully. Your magical experiences tend to be amplified. That's been my experience.
Well, that's I could see that happening, especially when doing magic. The thing is, what I don't know about groups, and I'll tell you, I mean, I've been in my, you know, magical groups. Everybody's going to be a different level in the magic. And, you know, some people need to work on their shadow self. Some people need to work certain things. And when you're working with a group, you really want to know who's where, because, you know, sometimes it just doesn't feel right, or the energy goes off because everybody's all over the place. So you kind of want it to be in somewhat in alignment. I've been in magical groups that I just thought, okay, this ain't working.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just, it doesn't feel right, or I feel sick. You don't want to do a magical operation and then want to go puke about 2 seconds later because the energy is just weird. So, and that has happened, that I didn't feel lively or euphoric or happy after the ritual. I would feel sick. And then if I feel sick during that ritual, I know that something went off. I don't know what went off, but something is off.
I think with the better organized groups out there, they have a curriculum which they take their students through. So once the students have gone through a number of grades, people are going to be pretty well on the same page.
Okay, well, I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, as you pointed out, certain people are going to be better developed in certain areas than others, but taking them through a structured curriculum, they should all be on the same page at the end.
No, I totally get it. But because they're even doing the curriculum, I do feel that they need to work with the practical magic. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah. So, would you like to talk about some of the current projects that you're engaging in? I know you're doing a whole lot of videos on YouTube and TikTok and the like, and there's your music. Would you like to share some of your current projects?
Well, I'm working on new music, very occult influenced, very gothic. There's vocals involved. I'm pushing to share more about goetic entities and not to have that stigma about them, because there's so much stigma about them, and pushing TikTok. And so more people are aware of the Cliponic tree and the goetic entities, and they're not like these evil entities.
When I asked you for your bio, when we first discussed doing this, you said that the videos that you do, the music videos, tend to have a very strong spiritual component. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, how you incorporate your spirituality into your music.
Well, when I write music, I do think of the Cliponic tree or a specific deity. I want the person to try to feel the energy that I'm putting in. And also that it is entertainment. But I also I want them to feel a specific energy or a mood. Mood is very, very important when it comes to music to me. It has to put me in some sort of a mood. So I will actually banish the house before I even write music.
So when you talk about putting into a particular mood, I assume you're working with Netza on the Tree of Life. You're working with the emotional center.
Yes, exactly. I sometimes also work with the sword because I want everything to be all moony and you know, dreamy.
Well, that's the beginning of the spiritual path. It's where the astral is and everything else. So do you incorporate Tiferet elements into your music as well?
No, everything is minor. Everything I have is minor, so everything is very Yesod, or goes down into more horror of the clip-off. I don't think I have any songs that are in major keys. It's just I don't feel it. And to me, Tipperith is like, yay! That's how it feels to me.
Okay. So when you work with the cliff-off, what do you use as an entry point for the cliff-off? Do you go in through Yesod, or do you work your way up to the abyss and go in through Darth?
I go through the abyss. I go to Darth, and then I go into the Clip-off, and then I enter Lilith, and then I go into Gamaliel.
Wow. Okay, I mean, that'd be like a topic for discussion on its own. Yeah, I can imagine that being incredibly complex. So if anyone wanted to learn more about you and your work and possibly engage your services, could I get your contact details?
Yeah, YouTube, Spektor Baal, Spektorbaal, and TikTok at Spektor Baal, Spektorbaal, and official at spektorbaal@gmail.com. No, official spektorbaal@gmail.com to contact for spiritual consulting or in-depth tarot card readings.
Okay, so we've still got a couple of minutes to go, so perhaps we can talk about the various services that you have. I know you do tarot readings, you do spiritual consulting if people need any sort of assistance in areas in their life. perhaps just to fill in the last few minutes, you could talk about the
Well,
various
no,
services you have.
working on astral projection, opening the third eye, removing any type of blockages. If they need help contacting a specific spirit in the Goetia or any type of god, Greek god, Egyptian god, in-depth tarot card readings, tarot card readings, what has to do with relationships or finances, things of that matter.
Okay, so you mentioned working with some of the Greek gods. I mean, that's sort of my area as well. So I was wondering which Greek gods you worked with and what sort of results you've had with them.
I've worked with Hecate because I was actually learning with my tarot. Before I even began working with the clip-off, I worked with Hecate a lot, or Hecate. I've worked with Hades a lot. And actually, I used Hades to asked Hades to help me exorcise. I was doing an exorcism to remove a spirit out of a box.
Out of a box?
Yeah, there was a person who passed that I took care of. There was a mirror that she had, and there was a spirit in there, and it was very, very chaotic. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was an egregore. I don't know if it was a real spirit. I banished it with the lesser banishing. Nothing helped. I decided to call Hades, and he just knocked that thing out of whatever it was in there. And then the whole area felt like a carnival ride. Like it felt very happy and very carnival, the energy. And I really enjoyed working with Hades.
That's interesting because not many people work with Hades. So I'm fascinated.
Hades is very masculine. He could really show masculinity. I do feel he's very good. It's like this. Nobody contacts this spirit. Okay, I gotta go contact it. That's the way I look at it, because I want to contact the spirits that people don't talk to. They're lonely. They need to talk to somebody. So yeah.
I actually totally get that because I like working through the PGM, and there are a number of entities there that haven't been called on in over 1,500 years.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, it's basically it's a spell book that goes back to between the 2nd century BCE and the 5th century CE, and there are entities there that are forgotten. And
wow, now I'm interested in that.
Yeah, my experience has been you call on an entity that's been forgotten for so many years, they're very eager to come.
Well, I'm interested in that. You got to send me some links because now I'm curious.
Hans Dieter Betz, he translated the PGM texts, and when you first go through it, it's like a dog's breakfast. You've got all these different spells there, but eventually you start to wrap your head around them. But there's incredible stuff there. Some of the spells in there are very simple folk magic spells, like how to drink a lot without getting drunk, stuff like that. But there are also incredibly complex rituals that were obviously written by someone who had priestly training. The thing is that with ancient Egypt, you had priests working in temples for 3 months of the year, and then they'd be out in the community for the rest of the year. So you had people with a high level of magical training, and they would probably be, magicians for hire. Plato wrote about
anything wrong with magicians for hire.
Well, that's the way it's always been. But, there's been this ongoing discussion as to whether people should charge. There has to be some sort of exchange of energy.
There has to be an exchange, and plus the experience and the knowledge, and it does take work.
Yeah. Yeah, and you need to be recompensed for all that work. I mean, in your case, you've got 8 years of experience, 8 years of working with clients, going through various esoteric texts and the like. You've gone to much more effort than the average person ever will. So you need to be compensated for that.
Yeah, I just felt that it was me. I mean, my first book that I've ever opened was Buckland's Book of Witchcraft. That was what, 12?
Yeah. Okay, well, we're starting to run out of time. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
I would like to say thank you for having me on, and I truly appreciate it.
It's been great having you on. I enjoyed picking your brains and having you share some of the work that you're doing. And I wanted to thank you for coming on the show and letting us get to know you a little bit better. I wanted to wish you success with your future endeavors. And you know, you're changing people's lives with the magic that you're doing. You're also changing people's lives with the music that you're recording. It's a very worthy path that you're on.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just grateful that I know what path I'm on. That's what I'm grateful for. Because sometimes you never know what it's like. Well, you're doing this now. Okay.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I agree with that. It's also nice to get positive feedback from people. In your case, you have a large client base, so presumably you've got clients getting back to you, thanking you for the assistance that you've rendered to them, and
Yeah.
that's what actually makes things worthwhile, knowing that you're affecting people's lives for the better.
No, it's important. Life is hard already, so any little bit you could give back, you know, hopefully it'll help somebody else.
Absolutely. So I've run out of questions to ask you, and we've just about run out of time. Hercules, do you have any questions for Spektor?
No, we think alike in very many ways. I haven't explored some of the realms that you're exploring or that you've explored, but I'm very familiar with the Greek underworld. Adis and Hecate are very much a part of my life. Adis does have a very powerful energy, and he is very responsive. And I too, I don't believe in compelling anybody, human, incarnate, discarnate, or non-human, to do anything. You know, it's relationship, it's communication. You work together or you don't, and that's the end of the story. So it's very refreshing to hear that coming through somebody else's mouth. So thank you to both of you. This was awesome. I look forward to another conversation with both of you. So let's arrange that in the future.
Absolutely.
I will strive to have this up by midnight tonight, and I'll post links to it on my page.
Thank you
Great.
so much, Hercules, and thank you, Spektor, for coming on.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Season's greetings, everyone. And
Oh yeah.
very soon.
Yeah, season's greetings to everyone.
Okay, be well.
Be well.
Okay,
Bye
bye.
bye.